Hi, I'm back with quite a fun episode today for 1921. We have two diary entries, the 19th of January and the 20th, and they're both very short. The 20th really short because Dmitri couldn't remember what he did part of the day. So do recall that he wrote these about 10 days, a week to 10 days after the events he describes actually occurred. He wasn't writing them on the day. Okay, so let's dive right in. The 19th January 1921 was a Wednesday. He was in Paris writing in his own apartment. And this is another summation. I didn't do a lot of these as summaries, so I hope you're not too put off by the fact that aside from some quotes, these are summaries, and material about Coco will not be, if you're worried about that. All right, so he got up in the morning and did his usual thing. He wrote a bit. He kept notes, every day on what had happened that day, or I guess what had happened the day before. So he gets up, he does his writing, and then he went to Saint-Cloud. And I'll bet you can guess what he was doing in Saint-Cloud. He was golfing, of course. And today his golfing companion was Michel Murat, Prince Michel Murat. You remember him from last time, I hope. He was a French prince, and the two of them had lunch and then played a full 18 holes of golf. And I have to say, I'm rather impressed that Dmitri was spending time with Michel Murat, and conversely, that Michel Murat was spending time with him, because Dmitri was so seriously interested in politics and current events, and a lot of times the politicians he met would just assume he was kind of unintelligent non-entity. That was, unfortunately, that was the assumption that people had about Grand Dukes, that they were just bon vivant and like to gamble and that sort of thing in the south of France. And certainly Dmitri liked to do that, but there was a very serious side to him that, in my opinion, even trumped the other side. And as I mentioned yesterday, Murat was a deputy from the Chamber of Deputies at that time, and overall a serious man. So I would love to know what their conversation over lunch was like. But Dmitri doesn't say. What he does say is that he was very disappointed once again in his performance on the golf course, and that he actually despaired of ever being a good golf player. Well, he'll be taking some lessons, so we'll see. And after he finished playing golf, and he went to Maria's, just stopped by, I guess, and then went to see Linda Porter, his old friend Linda Thomas, who had not that long ago married Cole Porter. And this woman, Dickie Ward, was there, that he mentions in a previous diary entry. And he writes in quotes, "She's a terribly sweet girl, and it was amusing to see her after our stay at the House of Tongue," end quote. So the House of Tongue, that sounds rather scandalous, doesn't it? But actually not. It's a place in Scotland. Was it an estate? I can't remember. But he met her in Dickie Ward in Scotland in association with the Duchess of Sutherland. And one of the places he stayed in Scotland, one of the estates, if I recall correctly, was called the House of Tongue. So, snigger if you must, but it was a very respectable place. So he'd just gone by to see Linda, but he ended up being invited for dinner, and so he stayed for dinner. And I guess Maria was invited as well. They must have rung her up, so she came for dinner. And then Cole Porter also turned up. and they all had dinner together. And, you know, unfortunately, Dmitri never says, as I recall, never says a single word about what he thought of Cole Porter and what he thought of Cole Porter's music. He'd been quite infatuated with ragtime music as a younger man before the revolution, and yeah, seems like he would have liked Cole's music, but he just never says anything about it. So after dinner, they went to the theater to see a review called Chauve-souris of Moscow. And so it was a Russian production, Russian emigre production. And that's what makes this episode so much fun, or what makes it so much fun. And I'm going to talk about that at the end. And Dmitri had seen it before, and now he was going with a new set of friends and with his sister, and he remarks that he liked it even better than the first time. He really loved this show. And afterwards, this little party went to Maria's, and this was precisely the kind of little group that he really enjoyed. People that he knew and was comfortable with, his sister and Linda Thomas, who had been in the past one of his closest friends, and they go and see, at his recommendation, I assume, they go and see this theater performance, and there's this sweet girl, Dickie Ward, and yeah, it's precisely the sort of thing that he loves, as opposed to these sort of sordid or decadent parties. And in fact, if you watched the 1906 episode today, then you recall that I was actually talking about he really didn't like to be around people who were behaving in how to put it, in a kind of sordid way. All right, so this very brief diary entry of the 20th, which was a Thursday. He couldn't remember what he did in the morning, and the mornings are very often the most interesting parts of his Paris diary entries, because the mornings were when he received people. But it must not have occurred that morning, because he doesn't remember what he did. But he does remember that he had lunch at Maria's, and it was just the two of them. And then afterwards, they took a walk and did some shopping. So nice brother-sister time. Then he had dinner with his friend Bob Luders at Ciro, and afterwards went to the Crisavalonis, these wealthy bankers from Romania who were treating Maria and Gulia so kindly, and also Dmitri. And then he went home early. All right, so now let's dive into the really fun part of this, which is the bats. I call it the bats in lieu of the French word, which was Chauve-souris. The program, or the performance was Chauve-souris of Moscow, and I have this marvelous picture. I'm gonna risk screwing everything up here with the camera, so hopefully you can see. This is some of the artwork from the production programs and promotional posters and things like that. And I found this on a marvelous website called modernity.org, and there's an article on that website written by a woman named, what is her name? Sarah J. Townsend. So I encourage you to go to that website and look up she has a really nice long article with lots of photographs of both the actual live performance and the artwork around it. Really marvelous stuff. Really sort of lush. I've got to show you one more. Okay, here we go. Fantastic. The colors. Okay. You get to see the close-up of my hand again. So I'm going to read you an excerpt from her article. Apparently, it started, the first performances were in 1919, at the end of 1919, and Dmitri had seen it, I believe, in 1920, And okay, so during the final days of 1919, an exquisite animal unfurled its wings on the stage of the Théâtre Féminin in Paris. Composed of Russian émigré artists, the company known as the Chauve-Souris was directed by a voluble and rotund Armenian named Nikita Baliev, who doubled as the master of ceremonies and regaled the audience in his comically poor French during the intervals between the brief scenes. Among the Chauve-Souris' colorful depictions of pre-revolutionary Russia was La Nuit chez les Tziganes, in which an ensemble of gypsy women sang for the patrons of one of Moscow's oldest and most legendary restaurants. Katinka featured a buxom young woman wearing a stylized version of a Russian peasant's garb who performed a stilted polka, her body moving with the jerky motions of a mechanical doll to the cues of a peasant man and woman at her side. The review also offered a nod to local traditions with its dramatization of the French folk song La Claire de la Lune, and the exoticism of the Orient added to the allure of La Fontaine de Bakhchisarai, a two-part tableau inspired by a Pushkin poem about lust and violence in the harem of a Crimean Khan. It is not dramatic theater, mused an enraptured reviewer who found his skills of classification befuddled, nor is it lyric theater or music hall or cabaret, but all of them at once with singular power and taste. So I would give my right arm to be able to go back in time and see a performance of that. It was the very early days of cinema, but I need to see if I can find perhaps a recording of it toured. It wasn't just in Paris. It was a show that toured. So maybe somebody at some point did filmed it. Okay. So I love that. Once again, I encourage you to have a look at the article on the website, and we move on tomorrow to a very short diary entry of the 21st, and then the diary entry of the 22nd, where Coco makes her first appearance. So come back for that, and I'll see you next time. Bye.